Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro. We are reviewing A Hidden Life, directed by Terrence Malick, who we think is one of the great directors. We love Terrence Malick. You know, that makes us Tree of Life stans, but the past few films that he has done, the Unholy Trilogy, is just less good. Since A Hidden Life premiered at Cannes Film Festival, it was considered this return to form. Malick's back to using a script. I definitely want to talk about Terrence Malick and his whole career, since I've seen everything except for Voyage of Time. He had his Badlands and Days of Heaven were movies that were beautifully shot, but he didn't have his wide-angle Terrence Malick thing yet. And they're both movies that had excellent screenplays. Amazing gifted storyteller. Then he does Thin Red Line, The New World, and Tree of Life. He develops his style. He stops editing in a linear way. He gets rid of that convention, but he still keeps the stories, but then he's really locked into his themes of oneness and connecting with God and being tempted by Vices and vices and coping with evil. You know, very ingrained in nature.
Yeah,
loyalty versus committing acts of evil and war or violence. I mean, then Tree of Life was a peak where he just went full out and made a movie that was about everything to him. And then the next three movies were experiments because they didn't have scripts. So he'd get Natalie Portman, Ryan Gosling, Christian Bale to walk around and do Terrence Malick things, and he kind of became a parody of himself. I personally actually like all of those movies because as movies, it's oh, he's doing something different, but it's obvious that they're not his best. And they're not telling memorable stories, and so there's not as much to take away from it. This movie still recalls a very similar style to everything he's done this decade. It's not accessible, it didn't go back to the filming style of Thin Red Line or before. It's camera movements all over, the editing, but what grounds it and makes people say that it's a return to form is that the plot is very clear, which has been unlike his films lately. In that it's about a conscientious objector who lives in Germany during World War II. Him and his wife are living in this beautiful village in the mountains. And the fascist government in Nazi Germany, they won't let you live your life without participating in the war in some way. And this man decides, this is not what I stand for. This movie's got jump cuts. It'll cut to, a caterpillar or a leaf in the middle of a scene. You don't experience it the same way as you experience, scenes in another movie. So it has that quality that you can easily be taken out of the movie, but at the same time, if you're into it, you experience it differently than other films because the images flow together in a way that is emotionally connected, but not a story or a script. You're not reading down the page. Scenes that are motivated by emotion and theme, and that's it. First of all, this is better than the last trilogy of movies. I think this is kind of a masterpiece. But that doesn't mean I think everything about it is perfect. But I think the story he told and what he achieved with it is masterful. Yeah. But this is an almost 3-hour movie, and there were definitely parts where my mind was wandering because it felt repetitive. It definitely lost its sense of story at times. I could have gotten up during the middle, went to the bathroom, walked around the block, and come back and not really miss anything. I wouldn't say that for the whole movie. I would say that for some of the movie. The middle kind of became a blur. There are scenes that stand out, and there are scenes that feel they're exploring the same sort of thing that we already saw, which is that he's going to put up with whatever may happen to him. But by the end of the film, it really did a good job of capturing this character's connection to something higher than himself in a way that is very profound. I would have never done what he did. Even if I believed that something was wrong, I would be get me back to my family, get me back to my village, let me just be with my wife and children. That would matter to me more than my moral obligation at that moment. So it's actually not an easy answer. The movie's interesting because it gets you to understand something that 99% of audiences wouldn't do. You wouldn't lose everything for this. As characters will reiterate to him, you're not going to make a difference by doing this. And he still is dedicated to the higher spirituality. I think the film is asking like a lot of really deep questions about like morality, and it's grappling. It's definitely grappling, and it's not answering those questions. And when it starts to ask those, I would say like in the last third or quarter of the movie is like when I snap back to like attention and like really became invested in the movie. And there were just some parts towards the end that were like devastating to me and like completely got me. So I would put that in like a box where I think like the movie was like very, very good. And then other than that, I have to like criticize a little bit of this movie. Some of the acting, when there was a character that wasn't that significant, like trying to do something with like the main character, felt like stilted, because it seemed like they would say something to the character like you realize that like this is this, right? And the character can't say anything because they seem like they're constrained for some reason, but it's because characters in Malick movies like don't use words as often, so they just kind of like sit and stare and like think about something, and the actors are just kind of standing there like trying to like do something, but they know they can't speak. Like I saw that a lot. The best scenes in the movie were scenes. Other scenes, like it was like a character shouting, and like it has this weird push into their face in like a wide angle close up when that's happening, which happens like over and over again to the point where I don't really think it was very effective. There was a scene when he was in with like a priest, and like they use like this kind of close up, and it was like a really good close up, like a beautiful looking close up. I wanted Terrence Malick to like give me more of that. My favorite scene in the scene that's the most impactful, it had like those close-ups in it. I was like, this is a brilliant fucking close-up. Like I want this to be like Terrence Malick's thing. But during a good portion of that scene, they showed it in a wide, and I wanted to get in there, and then finally they did.
One of my favorite scenes is in the beginning when they are in their village and they're like both narrating about how their life in their village is like this warm bubble full of like all the goods and love that they need to like survive, like all the sustenance of life. I was watching that and I was like, this is why I love the Tree of Life. Like,
there's some parts I feel like that.
And the camera movements are like hyper expressive. In this scene, the cinematography itself, the movement, everything was enough to evoke like emotion like on its own. I would say that Ad Astra did that. There aren't that many movies where the visuals alone can evoke like a strong response.
The scene when the husband comes home to the wife was like really good to me, and that's also, you know, a shout out to like the two leads in this movie who I think are like really good. There's a little flashback to her saying like, oh, when we met and I saw you for the first time, and that's all done with like her kind of walking around, and she's like in the medium ground and he's like in the background, and he just kind of turns and looks at her and like stands up to like introduce himself, and it feels so like not that significant of a moment because it was shown like that. If they did like close-ups and she was like eyeing him and he was eyeing her, like that's all it would have needed to feel that way. But this scene felt like, oh, like now I stand up and now I approach like this woman who is like walking around like touching her hair. I criticize Wes Anderson movies for being too constrained in their style when like I want to be more of a part of a scene, but like the rules of Wes Anderson are getting in the way. So I have to apply that to Terrence Malick in some ways. Although like I am a bigger fan of his style, it works better for me. There were some scenes in this movie and like some shots that looked like really well fucking framed. Like there was one like dolly shot where it was going through like the prisoner cells. Like my God, if you shot the rest of the movie like that, like it would have had some crazy good photography. It's a mixed bag for me, but overall, like what he achieved with the story and like the way it made me feel and like think and reflect is like, it was a masterful movie. I'm reinvigorated by my boy Terrence Malick.
At the end of the movie, I feel like you understand it on a level where the elements of the film, the stillness and the mountains in the background, like the land itself, everything feels like it has a purpose. And at the end of the movie, I felt like I could see that purpose. There's like a shot where the wife is like tearing up the ground, and that like kind of clicked a lot of stuff for me because I thought like this is her getting mad that the earth that they stand on, like the physical world that they exist in, like has to be so evil. It has
to be so still. Like God doesn't stand up to evil kind of thing.
The way that they say like the sun shines for good and evil. You know, the mountains don't move. It's always beautiful. Like even though there's disgusting things happening in other parts of the country,
Yeah.
and people all over the country are supporting it and participating in it, nature doesn't seem to move.
And it looks like all that's happening is that evil's like conquering and like God's letting it happen. These are like the questions in the movie that are like really good and like make you like into it.
Yeah, but again, it's like the middle of the movie is sort of blurred together a bit,
Yeah.
and if they took only the best scenes in this film, it could have been easy like top 10 of the year movie
Yeah, I
for me.
agree.
I saw the genius by the end of the movie. I was
Yeah.
like, wow, like this movie actually achieved something really special. You don't get that in a lot of movies. You only get it from masterful filmmakers like Terrence Malick. If you don't like Terrence Malick, you will not like this movie. People say it's his most accessible since like The Thin Red Line. I think it's less accessible than The Tree of Life. I will give this film a 9 out of 10.
I would also give this film a 9 out of 10.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
What's your best hiding spot? Shh, just kidding, don't give it away.